Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in. It is not race week, but we are about to jump into our first double header of the season. A bit of a taster for our back-to-back triple headers at the end of the year, which I'm sure Kelly and PozzA are looking forward to as much as I am, which means we're definitely looking forward to the racing. Not really looking forward to how logistically recording these podcasts are going to work. But before we jump into our predictions for the Barcelona-Catalunya circuit, we finally have a chance to discuss the rule change that's coming in 2027. If you're not sure what these changes are, we'll include a link in the description below. The basic things that you need to know is that we'll see a reduction in engine size from 1000 cc's to 850 cc's, an outright ban on ride height devices, and tighter restrictions on aerodynamics. While I personally welcome the ban on ride height devices, something I think should have been introduced much sooner than 2027 due to the risks, I think the restriction on aerodynamics doesn't go nearly far enough, and I'm curious as to what you guys think.
Honestly, I think it's best that the MotoGP engines were reduced from 1000 cc. As much as I love to see bikes going fast, cars going fast, it was too dangerous. There was too many crashes. People were getting too extremely injured, you'd say. You're seeing riders with like broken ankles and broken arms and having to get surgeries. And I just think if it gets to that point, it has to be reduced. Not for like it's just for the safety of the riders. It's still fast enough that we can watch it and enjoy it, but it's also slow enough that they're safer. And that's probably one of the best regulations that's come in, I think, in my opinion. Also, the reduction, I believe it's a reduction in the engine changes permitted to each rider. So for the 20 races in a year, each full-time rider is permitted to 6 engines, and if the season goes to 21 or 22 races, they're permitted to 7. And then the last thing well, maybe the three other things I want to mention, which I won't yap about for too long, but the bike minimum weight of 153 kilos. I'm not really too sure if that's too heavy or not for a bike, but just by the sound of it, it sounds way too heavy. But that could just be me. Fuel tanks are completely capped off for the season. You are allowed 20 litres for a full Grand Prix and then 11 litres for a sprint. And then they've actually come in with a new regulation stating that from 2027 onwards, they are hoping to use 100% sustainable fuel. Do I think that's going to be the case? Yeah. Do I think it's going to stay very long? Probably not. But we'll see how that goes.
I hope that the new regulation changes do work a lot better than the 800 cc's of 2007 did. But personally, I would have been completely happy if they just sort of reduced the aero and the ride heights back to sort of the 2020, 2021 level. I feel like the racing then was pretty close. Racing was actually possible. But yeah, I'm hopeful that these ones are good.
It is funny that you mentioned the previous 800s because that's exactly what I was thinking when Kelly was talking about the crashes. Because obviously last time the 800s were insanely dangerous, but I'm sure that the engineers will be able to make something that's not yeeting the riders, so to speak. At least I really, really hope so. I guess the only other rule change that has come in is the GPS data is now going to be shared among teams. So I was chatting to some people last weekend at Le Mans because when I read this rule, I didn't really understand what it meant. But what it means is at the track, the teams send someone in with a camera, and that basically captures the way that each rider goes into a corner, the lean angle, the speed, their body positioning, all of that sort of thing. Dorna, the FIM, whoever it is, they're going to be doing it themselves and then sharing it with everyone. So it'll be much, much easier for teams and riders to compare data to their teammate and other teams. I quite like this because I love seeing the differences in riding styles between, say, Aleix Espargaro, who's very rigid on the bike and very upright, and Jorge Martin, who basically just throws himself around the bike more than anything. And yeah, I just hope that we get to see some of those body positioning changes and things like that. I think it could make some really fun comparison videos, really. So moving on to liveries. Fingers crossed that a race this year we do get to see an entire grid of special liveries. I just think it would be utterly chaotic for us as viewers being like, oh, which bike's the purple one again? Because that happens when you only get, a race full of things that you're not used to seeing. Even though we've got like a bunch of red ones at the moment, you do have to be like, oh, is that a gas or a Ducati? Especially because Pedro Acosta's like right at the front battling. But I asked you guys to tell us, me, and the listeners your favourite liveries from the past, and I will throw some photos up on screen of what they are so people can visualise them at the same time.
Obviously, as you guys will have figured out by now, I'm quite into like livery and number design. So when Kate gave us this question, my first thoughts were just, how am I going to pick one specifically? So I've actually come up with 3 that I really like. I'm going to group 2 of them together because they are very similar. But I started off with the 2009 Ducati special liveries that they ran for Nicky Hayden in the Indianapolis GP and Casey Stoner in the Australian GP. Just the way that they switched from pretty much the plain red that they used to run and still do run to white with a couple of blue accents for like the Australian flag, and I just think it looks really clean, really nice on the eye as well. And my other one is 2003 Valencia, the special livery that Repsol Honda ran, Valentino Rossi. I feel like this livery went up a lot in my ranks when I got a 118 version of the bike. I just think it looks really good in person and in all the pictures. Just the bright orange and the yellow combination, I think, works really well together, especially with all like the curbs in Valencia being that color as well. I just think it fits really well.
Yeah, I do wonder if I'm actually limited in my opinion of that Rossi bike because I can't see the differences between red and orange, so that's kind of a shame thinking about it. My favourite, I have actually just gone for one. That's the thing about, I guess, giving you guys this homework. I already knew exactly what I was going to do. So my favourite is, without a doubt, the LCR Castrol. It probably helps that I am a massive, massive fan of LCR, the green one that Cal Crutchlow ran. I can't remember the exact year because there are some variations. It's very similar to the one that they put Brado on last year, which is quite a nice nod to Castrol, and I absolutely adore it when they run the solid colours. Or maybe it's the nostalgia, but yeah, that's got to easily be my favourite livery of all time. I do want to give a shout out though to Speed Up. It was in Moto2. The way they change their colours and giving us a pink bike every now and then, I absolutely adore that as well.
I struggled a little bit with finding liveries. Obviously, you guys, one of you is older and the other one comes from a racing family, so you'd know more liveries than I did. So I managed to come up with 3. One of them is actually, I believe, the Pramac from last year, the Mugello livery with the fire on it. I know it was very controversial. I know there were some people who looked at it and they were like, what the hell is that? But I loved it. I don't know why. I think it's just the flames. The flames made me love it a lot. Another one is the 2005 Ducati with the Marlboro logo on it. That could be car nostalgia from me from about the 70s or 80s when they were allowed to have cigarette sponsors. But I think they're so cool looking. And then the last one is, I believe, a 2004 Yamaha, which had a Spider-Man livery on it. I thought it was so, so cool looking. I love Spider-Man myself. It kind of reminds me of Star Wars being promoted on the F1 years and years ago, and it was just, to see Spider-Man on a bike, I thought it was so cool. So those are my 3 liveries.
Yeah, I was definitely in the I hate the Pramac livery, like with passion, I don't know why. Maybe it was because they were running the ice and the fire at the same time, and I was just like, this is so cringe. But we're all entitled to having different opinions, like PozzA and the current LCR livery.
Something that's only just come to my mind, which makes a bit of sense, is I sort of tend to lean towards liveries with like red and bright orange. It's just something that I personally like, but obviously in Kate's case, with her color blindness, she'll sort of lean away from them because she can't see them properly.
I think it's just nice that we all have different concepts of what we like on a bike. I like Paz likes his red and his orange. Kate, you wouldn't really see the brighter colors on bikes, so you prefer different kind of ones, probably calmer ones. And I love crazy colors on a bike, like any colors mixed. And I think the Pramac livery says enough about that with like purple and orange and blues and all that. But that's just my style of bike. I like crazy colors just splashed all around it. But it's nice that we don't all have the same opinion. Like we all like different things and it kind of just mushes up together. That's great.
I think we need more blue. What do we have at the moment? Trackhouse, I think that's it. But yeah, I think blue would be quite nice on a bike, although I don't know who would run it, thinking about it.
Grisini is blue. It's kind of like a more paler blue, but it is like full blue with a bit of red.
See, I think that's purple. That's just me.
Yeah, that's fair. I can't think of any other bikes that have blue on it except Grisini and Trackhouse. I've not seen blue on any of the others yet.
I'm thinking that blue the LCR ran last year, except over the whole bike. That's definitely what I'd like to see.
Oh yeah, I get you. That would be banging actually. I'd love to see that.
Are you guys forgetting the blue on the Yamaha?
Maybe.
Oh!
I only brought this up because two of the ones I was thinking about were Yamahas from like the mid 2000s, and they had a lot of blue on them.
How did we forget Yamaha? Out of all of them, how did we forget Yamaha?
We never see the Yamaha.
I know we never see it, but I'm a Fabio fan. I should remember what Yamaha is. Fabio, mate, I'm sorry. Hey, me and Paul would like to ask you a question. We want to spring a question on you since you do it to us almost every week.
I haven't done it so far this week.
Not yet this week, but you do it every week and we've never done it to you. So we thought it's only fair that we do it to you. So we would like to ask you, we know that you attended two of the Grand Prix, Jerez and Le Mans, and our question is, once you attended those two races, which one was your favourite, atmosphere-wise? Which one would you prefer?
Atmosphere-wise, I'm actually going to go against what is popular opinion, and I'm going to go with Jerez because it just had so much more of a friendly vibe towards all of the riders in all of the classes. On their cooldown lap, when they finished the race, every single rider got cheers and applause and all of that sort of good vibes. That didn't happen in Le Mans. Quite often when the people from the back of the grid, talking like Augusto Fernandez and then the people in the lower classes, they didn't get any applause. People were sort of just already forgotten about them, and that I really didn't like that at all. The only thing I'd actually trump Le Mans for is their merchandising, because it was completely incredible and blew Jerez completely out of the water. So if you want merch, you want to go to Le Mans.
I just wanted to build on that question and ask another one. Obviously, you've said that you might be going to Phillip Island later on this year. I just wanted to ask, are there any other races that you haven't attended yet that you'd like to in the future? And what sort of draws you into those races?
There's definitely two I do want to go to. Valencia for obvious reasons, especially if the championship's decided there. I feel like Valencia is probably one that most people want to attend, even though the racing isn't spectacular. I also really want to go to Thailand because the racing there has been spectacular so far. I feel like Thailand's quite underrated. And yeah, probably those two. Do you guys have a particular track that you desperately want to attend?
Well, my opinion is probably different because you guys would have more access to it than I would, but I really badly want to go to Phillip Island. And you guys would obviously live way closer to it than I would because, New Zealand, Australia, and then all the way across the world in Ireland, but I really hope to one day go to Phillip Island.
I have a really long list of races that I want to attend, and most of them are just sort of the European ones, like Assen, Mugello. I really like Aragon as a track, so that's another one I kind of want to go to, even though it is sort of in the middle of absolutely nowhere in the desert. Obviously, Phillip Island is the first one on the list that I want to go to, just being the closest to me, most accessible.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate that I'll tick Phillip Island off this year, and then we are doing our miniature meetup next year in Phillip Island, so fingers crossed it all goes smoothly. Shall we move on to our predictions?
Starting with my Moto3 predictions, I've gone for a very similar group of riders yet again. I'm still leaving Rueda out just because I don't feel like he's 100% fit and ready. So I've got Daniel Holgado in P3. Had a pretty strong race last time out in Tech 3's home race, and was pretty... Actually, no, he wasn't pretty strong last year in Catalunya, sort of where his title charge started to fall apart. But I feel like he'll recover and put in a good result this time. P2, I've gone David Munoz. If this is purely based on me thinking that he can show that level of maturity that he did in Jerez and not do what he did in Le Mans, trying to take everyone out, which he normally does. And P1, obviously, David Alonso. It's just so hard to look past him right now. He's been quite comfortably probably the best rider in Moto3 thus far. And he won last year in Catalunya as well, so I think he'll have a very good weekend yet again. And for my reserve, I've gone with Colin Vire again. He's been in pretty good form lately, so I think he'll be in and around the fight as well.
I honestly take you having Colin Vire in any format of your predictions as an absolute win. That's great for me. I'm happy. My Moto3 predictions really haven't changed. I have changed my reserve. That's pretty much it. So, of course, P1. Who else will I have? It's Colin Vire. I really, really hold out hope that he will win again. It might just be pure delusion at this point, but we'll see how it goes. P2, then I have Alonso. As you said, he's getting very comfortable now. Comfortably getting podiums and winning races, so I have him in P2 because I just cannot dethrone Vire yet. P3, then I've swapped him out. I have Holgado in P3. And then as my reserve, I have Ivan Ortola. He's come back up in his consistency and he's performing decently well, so that's my reserve.
I will be the sole person that doesn't have Vire anywhere around it. To be fair, my reserve is Yamanaka, purely based on his performance last year. For P3, I've gone for Nepa. P2, Rueda, even though, as Poz said, still possibly coming back from injury, I think as soon as he comes back, he'll be right up there. And P1, I agree with Poz. Got to be Alonso. I feel like he's just incredible on that bike, and so yeah. My Moto2 predictions for P3, I've gone for Alonso Lopez, P2 Garcia, and P1 Aaron Canet with a reserve of Jake Dixon. I know Dixon has had a horrendous start to the season, and I did strongly debate putting Fermin Aldeguer in these predictions, but considering we all seem to have absolutely cursed him last weekend out, I decided not to. So I'm trying for the reverse curse, being a Fermin Aldeguer fan. Let's see how that works out for me.
Well, I have to say for my Moto2 predictions, I did not go for the reverse curse. So one of us is going to perform better than the other, is all I'm saying. So obviously, I have Fermin Aldeguer P1. That will not change, and I don't plan to change it. If if I put him as P1 and he loses out again this week, then we know who the cursor is in this podcast. Then obviously P2, Alonso Lopez. That team together is just, they're fast, they're consistent, and yeah, I hope they do well. Then returning to my predictions is Sergio Garcia after his win again. He's been performing better and better. I feel like his consistency could use a bit of work, but I have faith in him, so I have him on the podium. And then as a reserve, shockingly out of nowhere, I've actually put Ayogura. His performances to me have been better, so I think he's a better bet to put as the reserve. So I have Agura as my reserve for Moto2.
Moto2's been one of those ones that I feel like have been really hard to predict this year. So for me, I've gone Joe Roberts in P3. He's been really consistent in the early part of the season, being in and around the podium battle, and I think he can keep that up. P2, I've gone Sergio Garcia. Well, the Boscoscuro that he's on in his hands this year has just looked really strong in most of the races this year, so I think he'll be up there again. And this might be a risk, but I've gone Alonso Lopez to jump back on top of the podium and win this race. And just to try not to curse him this time, I've gone Fermin Aldeguer as my reserve. For my sprint predictions, the winner is not going to be a shock. But for P3, I've gone Marc Marquez. It does seem like he's just gotten up to the point where he's figured out how to ride the Ducati like a Ducati and starting to put in more consistent results in and around the battle for the lead in the last couple of races. P2, I've gone Maverick Vinales just purely because the Aprilia has looked really strong in Catalunya the last couple of years, mainly in the hands of Aleix Espargaro, but Espargaro hasn't looked on it that much this year. And shockingly, P1, I've gone Jorge Martin. Just seems like the safest bet for sprint races this year. And as my reserve, just in case he does have a good weekend, I have put Aleix Espargaro, just because he's been in the podium fight the last 2 years, and it being his home track, I feel like he'll be coming in with a lot of confidence, regardless of how he's been this year.
And I think the Aprilia's being really strong here. It's something that definitely could happen, but I have just avoided Espargaro in my predictions entirely. For P3, I've gone with Pecco Bagnaia. P2, surprisingly, I suppose, I've gone Jorge Martin purely because I figure I'd like to be competitive in this fantasy championship, and the only way that that's going to happen is if I manage to get a sneaky win here and there up on you guys. So for P1, I have gone for Maverick Vinales, and my reserve is Marc Marquez.
Right, well, I presume you all can guess who I have as P1 for my sprint. It's our favourite sprint merchant, Jorge Martin. As always, that I probably will not change that throughout the whole season. It will just stay the exact same because it hasn't failed me really yet. P2, I have actually switched out Marc Marquez and Enea Bastianini. I have Marc now second and Bastianini third. And then as reserve, as Paul said, I put an Aprilia of Maverick Vinales. Because I am a pretty avid Aleix Espargaro disliker, and the Aprilia did look quite fast in this track, so I put Vinales as a reserve. And then moving straight onto the race, you will not believe it. It is an absolute travesty, tragedy. Everyone should be sad. I have dethroned Marc Marquez as the winner of the MotoGP race. I know, start crying. It's horrendous. But I have put Martin as the winner of the MotoGP race as well. That man has just been absolutely on it. Like, between the past couple of weekends, he's just been absolutely on it. So I have Martin in first, Marquez in second. I can't take him off the podium, not yet. I still hold faith. I have Pecco Bagnaia in P3, and then as a reserve, I have Pedro Acosta. I will still have Acosta as a reserve because even if I did take him out of the sprint, I feel like he will still get some valuable points. So he is my reserve for the race.
I like how last week I asked if you thought that Marc Marquez was entering his Aaron Canet era, and you said no, and you put him P2 for both the sprint and the race, Kelly. I'm quite impressed with that.
Listen, right? I've always had him as P2 or P3 for the sprint. I've always had him as that. And Martin has just been so on form the past couple of weeks. It'd be weird of me to not change it. I'm not saying he's an Aaron Canet. Like, I'm just saying once he gets used to the Ducati, that man will be on it. He's fast, all right?
My predictions are quite similar to my sprint, actually. Pecco in P3, Vinales in P2, and Jorge Martin in P1. Yeah, Martin, I just think, is hard to beat at the moment. He's just absolutely incredible, and I'm hoping that he keeps his form up because it'd be wonderful to see a satellite team take the championship. My reserve is Marc Marquez, so fingers crossed that definitely those podiums play out for me.
And for my race predictions, I've gone with the top 3 that we've seen in the last couple of races be at the front. I've gone Marc Marquez in P3. Pecco Bagnaia, I feel like he'll keep up his sort of theme of not being very competitive in the sprint races, then just absolutely flying through everyone in the main race. And I've gone for Jorge Martin to do a back-to-back double of the sprint races and the main race. He just looks really confident right now, looks really quick, which is also quite important. So I think he can get it done in back-to-back weekends. And as my reserve, I've gone Maverick Vinales, just again with Aprilia looking competitive here in the past.
Well, we would just have to wait and see if the Kelly curse is a thing. So if Mark wins and Furman doesn't place, then we'll know who we can blame.
No, it's happened before as well. I did it to Meyer and I'm scared it'll happen again.
Well, no,
It's definitely Kelly's fault, guys.
What did I do wrong? Come on. Just listen, right? You guys have put them as winners and podium placers in most of your predictions, and they have failed. All right, it's not just me. There's a party at play here. It takes 2 to tango, 3 in this case, but that's not the point.
Well, I suppose this is as good a time as any to remind everyone that we do accept bribes so that we won't curse you. So there's always that option for people. But I think this is probably the best place to leave this week's podcast. As always, thank you so much for joining us. Do let us know your predictions for the circuit of Catalunya Barcelona. Do hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the show. It really, really does help us grow. And we will be here after all the racing next week.